When Morning Glory came out, it got universally slated by the British press. And then it went on, to do whatever it done. It was just madness. We sold more singles than people sold albums. I think Don't Look Back in Anger sold well over 1 million singles. I personally think Definitely Maybe is a far better album.
Oasis came out of the gate with one of the best albums of all time. Definitely Maybe was a smash hit in the UK and made Oasis a hot topic in the world of music. The following year, What's the Story Morning Glory dropped, which was an even bigger hit, not just in the UK but abroad too. Wonderwall, Don't Look Back in Anger and Champagne Supernova were playing constantly on every radio station in the country, and Oasis became one of the biggest rock bands in the world. And then, they blew it. In 1997, they dropped their third album, Be Here Now, which would later be seen as a bloated, unlistenable bag of emotional vomit among most people. A cautionary tale of getting too big for your britches, which would doom the band's relevancy for the rest of time. Following Be Here Now, the band hit a slump, releasing two of their lowest reviewed albums to date, Standing on the Shoulder of Giants and Heathen Chemistry, which, while selling pretty well in the UK with a couple of hit singles, was a commercial flop in most of their territories. Noel looks back on this year with regret, stating to NME, "We should have never made Standing on the Shoulder of Giants. I'd come to the end. At the time, I had no reason or desire to make music. I had no drive. We'd sold all these fucking records and there just seemed to be no point." The band weren't exactly in the best place during this time, with Bonehead and Quigsy leaving the band changing labels, and both Gallagher's coming off hard drugs, not to mention a very troubled tour that resulted in a lot of infighting. In the mid-2000s, the band had a brief popularity spike with their sixth album, Don't Believe the Truth, which was their highest selling and best reviewed album in years, often stated as the band's comeback album, with hit singles like Lila and The Importance of Being Idle. The album was practically a pastiche of raw, dry 60s music like the Kinks, and nothing really beyond that. But it was a step in the right direction after the previous two albums, which were not really seen as being good by anyone. A few years later, Oasis released their final album, Dig Out Your Soul, once again changing their sound, this time to a psychedelic Beatles pastiche. It's not clear what year of the Beatles Oasis were attempting to copy here, but one thing for certain is that the band were back to being ambitious and creating epic rock and roll once again. The album was recorded at Abbey Road Studios, the same studio that the Beatles recorded most of their albums in, being their first time in that studio since Be Here Now. The band were also now elders of their field, in their late 30s and early 40s, looking back with fondness on their early days as rowdy, brash 20-somethings. Dig Out Your Soul is Oasis' most ambitious album since Be Here Now, but unlike Be Here Now, where the ambition causes the album to bloat itself way bigger than necessary, Dig Out Your Soul works with that ambition, and makes for, in my opinion, Oasis' third best album, behind their first two. This album represents the last breath of Oasis and the beginning of a new era for the Gallaghers, as this would be Oasis' final release before the band split just over a year later. And if you ask me, I think Dig Out Your Soul was the perfect finale to Oasis' lineup, and probably the best album the band could have probably made at this point in time. And I fucking love it. This video will essentially be me talking about each track from Dig Out Your Soul in some light amounts of depth, and basically explaining why I think this album is the magnum opus of Oasis' later years. That's about it. Let's get started. Back It Up opens the album with a bang, with a killer guitar riff and a slow-paced feel. Liam's vocals on this song are awesome. His snarls really amp up the song's badass feel and make for a very enjoyable experience. The opening lines, "Gold and silver and sunshine is rising up, pour yourself another cup of Lady Grey," are representative of the morning time, but could also be referring to something bigger. Calmly as the song rises, he pours himself another cup of tea, Lady Grey. Could be referring to how drug addicts get the heebie-jeebies when deprived of what they are addicted to, most likely heroin, as their lyrics make reference to laying love on the fire, since you have to heat up heroin to use it. The song also makes reference to the Rolling Stones with the final line of verse 2, "I'm gonna take a walk with a monkey man," which seems like nothing more than name-dropping. The short instrumental break before the last chorus is a nice addition, makes the whole song feel a tad more structured and fleshed out. Also, there's the story about the title of the song I thought was funny, so here it is. After titling Bag It Up, Gallagher was unaware that Jerry Halliwell had recorded a song with the same title. He told Mojo Magazine August 2008, quote, "When I came home with the finished thing, I stuck it on, the missus goes, 'Bag It Up? Isn't that a song by Jerry Halliwell?' I'm straight on the internet, and sure enough, I was like, 'You've ruined my entire year.'" End quote. Unlike the previous track, The Turning is a much more laid-back feeling track, but it isn't afraid to get loud when it's needed. This song is heavily influenced by religious texts, evident from the opening lines. Eyes over the city, rise up from your soul. Potentially meaning God's existence is empowered by the mortal souls who believe in him, and that being a Christian believer can be considered paradoxical, as people believe they think they're being watched from above. But if no one believed in God, he wouldn't be watching over any city at all. The chorus continues the religious themes. Shake your ragdoll could be a metaphor for shaking your beliefs, drawing a comparison between how people hold on to their religion like small kids. Baby holding onto their ragdolls. It can also allude to the shaking body parts, e.g. on the dance floor, probably in a manner which devout Christians would refrain from doing. She's encouraged to not think about if her actions will conflict with the word of God, because that wouldn't be to live in the moment, a common theme in many of Oasis' songs. If the rapture takes place, they will face whatever happens to them together. Could be a reference to her looking angelic, or that she went from being a devout Christian to behaving like a normal person after she shook her ragdoll. Noah stated in the interview that he was surprised at the amount of religious Armageddon he subconsciously wrote into the lyrics. If none of that was intentional, then I don't know what kind of song he was trying to write. This song is a much more toned down feel compared to the former, with the piano lead and simplistic drum beat during the verses. But during the chorus, the song explodes into this swaggering rock and roll number. Where I'd say the song peaks is during the guitar solo, which, if you ask me, is easily one of the best solos in Oasis' whole catalogue. It's nothing extravagant, but it makes the whole song better. The choir backing vocals are also a really nice touch. In spite of the title, Waiting for the Rapture isn't really about the rapture at all. In fact, this is closer to a love song than anything. Waiting for the Rapture is more reminiscent of the opener with its rhythm and structure throughout, and I'd say this is just as, if not even better than Bag It Up. This song is written by Noel about him meeting his wife. Big love to fall down from the sky. She took my hand and picked me up off the floor. The big love Noel encountered was his future wife Sarah McDonald, whom he met at a bar called Space in Ibiza. Ibiza? Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know. In 2000. During that time, Noel was down due to getting divorced from his first wife, Meg Mathers, and trying to quit his drug addiction. He thanks Sarah for helping him kick the drugs completely and making him happy again. And so it is likely that the rapture she saved him from was the fate of many rock and rollers: drug addiction, depression, and death. As Noel puts it, it's a love song inspired by the meeting of an angel in Ibiza. I said I'm tired. It's purely just Noel's special way of saying, "Will you go out with me?" This song is heavily inspired by 5 to 1 by The Doors. I mean, there's no way that this wasn't intentional, right? This song is easily one of my favourites on the entire album. I just love the thumping rhythm and chunky production of it all, not to mention Noel being an awesome vocalist as always. The Shock of the Lightning is my favourite song from Dig Out Your Soul, and also one of my favourite Oasis songs of all time. This song is an absolute banger. Noel said of the song, quote, "If The Shock of the Lightning sounds instant and compelling to you, it's because it was written and recorded dead fast. The Shock of the Lightning is basically the demo, and it has retained its energy, and there's a lot to be said for that, I think. The first time you record something is always the best." These lines suggest a protagonist caught in the tumult of desire and disillusionment, exuding the heat and passion while wrestling with an inner chill. There's a revelation in The Shock of the Lightning, a moment of love and epiphany that shatters the early morning calm. As the song's protagonist fails into the blinding light, they are subsumed by a force greater than themselves, one that both offers illumination and obliteration. My absolute favourite part of the song comes near the end of the song, where it quiets down and then builds up again with this insane drum solo. Afterwards, the song explodes into an epic solo until it quiets down at the end. Absolutely enthralling. The Shock of the Lightning was Dig Out Your Soul's lead single, released on September 29th, 2008. And if you ask me, there's no better song to be the lead than this one. It's a perfect display of what this album is all about. Easily the best song on the album, nothing short of amazing. I'm Out of Time is my second favourite from Dig Out Your Soul, and in my opinion is the best song Liam Gallagher ever wrote. Though it's not explicitly mentioned, Liam is likely talking about his current relationship with his brother Noel and the state of Oasis. At this point, the relationship and the band were under a lot of pressure and strain. Liam seems to be nostalgic for a simple time where they started out as a small band with the big ambitions of making it big, without all the consequences that comes with fame, such as drugs, violence, and a toxic lifestyle. The chorus could be asking the fans or the band, if they were to fall apart, would they pick him up and help him get through on his own? Which they did. As after Oasis broke up, Liam formed his own band, where they did not pick him up, but then they did pick him up during his solo career. I guess, I don't know. This song is very inspired by John Lennon, with its rhythm, pace, and overall atmosphere. Liam even samples one of John Lennon's last interviews at the end of the song for this very reason. And even if it's kinda ripping off his style, I love it. I'm Out of Time was released as Dig Out Your Soul's second single, released on December 1st, 2008, and if you ask me, much like how The Shock of the Lightning was a perfect lead single, I'm Out of Time is an extremely perfect second single, showing off how Doys handles slow songs. Get Off Your High Horse Lady is a slow-tempo, bass-heavy, psychedelic tour into the sunset. It also happens to be one of the worst Oasis songs ever made. This song is just bad, there's no way around it. Even in spite of my die-hard love for this album, I could admit this song isn't very good. This song's lyrics are pretty much entirely meaningless. I mean, get off your high horse, lady. I don't need a ride tonight. These lyrics are either incredibly vague or just complete nonsense. What doesn't help is the repetitive stomp clap hey ass rhythm and the horrid vocals. I actually can't tell if it's Liam or Noel singing because there is this disgusting filter placed over the vocals that makes it impossible to tell. This song would easily be a 0 out of 10 if it wasn't for the pretty neat instrumental that, while being quite monotonous after a while, is rather catchy and a nice change of pace from the terrible vocal work. That's really about it with this song. Moving on. Falling Down is once again another highlight from this album. This song is quite symbolic, mainly of the time, life, and eventual end of everything. Quite fitting, as this was not only the last single to release from Dig Out Your Soul, but the final Oasis single ever. This song has some of the strongest lyrics on the entire album if you ask me. Stuff like for instance. This song once again brings back the Beatles inspiration, as the drum beat is identical to Tomorrow Never Knows, alongside the whole vibe of this song being very inspired by that. Some might say it's ripping off that. I'd say it's taking an already existing style and making something new out of it. There really isn't much else worth saying about this song besides it being really good and an excellent way to end Oasis' singles chronology. Bieber's life is the psychedelic core of Dig Out Your Soul, with its slow tempo and incredibly vague lyrics. In the previous verse, he says, "Days turn into night," and it means the coming of something troubling or bad. People generally tend to pray in fear rather than stand up and fight their way through. He's asking people to let him come through and take them over that line that crosses into doing something instead of just praying. This song isn't really anything that notable, despite it being one of my favourites from the album. I don't really know what to say about it. It's just a kick-ass psychedelic number that reeks of 70s stoner music. That's about it. Ain't Got Nothin is a song supposedly targeted at the media, specifically at gossip magazines. He knows about their lies and twisted approaches to stories, following a bar brawl in Munich in 2002, which Liam was included in. The media wrote a lot of lies, according to Liam, in revelation of how the fight began and what went down. The song is quite brief. All you have is one verse and a chorus that's repeated for about 2 minutes, and then the song is over. Just like that. This song is a spiritual successor to The Meaning of Soul from Don't Leave the Truth. Both of them roughly serve the same purpose too. A quick burst of energy to keep the spirits up, and serve as a segue into the slower parts near the end of the album. For that purpose, I'd say this is a pretty solid song, but it doesn't really interest me like the rest of the album, unfortunately. The Nature of Reality is yet another slow-tempo, psychedelic, swaggering song. This one is pretty heavy in comparison to the rest, with an incredibly slow tempo and tuned-down riff, alongside all the other bells and whistles this album throws in every track. This song is about Andy Bell and his divorce, as he mentions here. Quote, "I got divorced and I went through therapy. It felt like my life was empty of love at the time, and the way I dealt with it was becoming a staunch atheist. Having been brought up as a Christian. It was a very religious upbringing, so I read Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion and decided to become an intellectual, scientific, logical, and rational. Out of that came this tune. It's me deciding there's no mystery." End quote. That's really it with this thing. Last song. Soldier On is not just the final track on Dig Out Your Soul, but also the final Oasis song in general. This song is a mid-tempo rocker about keeping on trying, but the thing I want to talk about with this is how it's sort of symbolically representing Oasis's breakup. The term soldier on means to continue something in a determined way, even if you aren't promised to succeed, which is exactly what happened after Oasis broke up. Liam soldiered on after Oasis, as did Noel. Intentional or not, this song is making reference to Oasis splitting up in some way. This song is honestly pretty boring. The instrumental doesn't really go anywhere, and the outro is dragged out way too much. The only saving grace is the melodica, always a nice sight seeing that used. This song bored me, sorry to say. Definitely a bit of a weak conclusion to Oasis's whole catalogue, but it's serviceable.
Love is a time machine upon a silver screen. It's all in our mind. Love is a litany, a magical mystery. And all in good time, and all in good time, and all